that was a little unexpected, and I can talk a little bit about what went wrong there. Um, I'm gonna give a few minutes for people to join back on. I just pushed the changes to the GitHub repo, and I'll drop those back in. Yeah, I'll drop that link back in. Here's the project link again. Okay. Let me open up Unity Hub. Well, actually, I'm going to re-download the project so I can follow along with all of you. For those of you who did download the project, we're going to have to re-download it. If you have GitHub, if you're familiar with the Git workflow, you can just pull the new changes. If you were downloading the zip project, or zip file, rather, sorry, I'm all tongue-tied now, then we're just going to need to re-download the zip file because there are some new changes that hopefully fix some of our problems, but apparently not all of them. I'm not exactly sure what the major problem is with, for some reason, Wwise gets disconnected from Unity and doesn't know how to find it again. So I'm just going to kind of walk through at least how I get it fixed on my end. If you can't quite get it fixed on your end using the same method, then just, maybe mention it in chat, and I can try to reserve a little bit of time, towards the end to see if we can help solve the problem. But yeah, I've gone back to re-download the zip file from the GitHub once more. Again, if you cloned it the command line or the GUI way, you can just pull the changes. I don't know what these things are. Always makes me nervous. But I'm going to extract it. And it's going to take a second. So when Wwise has a bad file and it didn't like one of the MIDI files that I had in there, it just kind of shuts down. It doesn't open at all. Fortunately, for those of you who want to keep going in Wwise, if you encounter something like that, it'll usually tell you what file it has a problem with. And you can open both the Wwise project file and what's called the work units in a text editor, and it looks kind of horrible, but it's readable. It's horrible but readable, and you can track down where that file is and just kind of delete it. And you might lose a little bit of work, but it's a lot better than like losing your entire Wwise project that you've worked very hard on. And so that's what I've been doing this past 15 minutes, at least partially, is tracking down what file it didn't like and deleting it. And then it started working again. But Unity still had a problem finding its Wwise friend. So that might actually happen for us here. We'll see. I'm gonna open up my Unity Hub again and open up that project and see if it can find its Wwise friend. Let's see if it can find it. Yeah, fingers crossed, yeah. Well, I'm glad I did decide to download, because otherwise I'd be very confused as to what everybody else's problem was. So we do have a Wwise bank load failed issue. The first thing I'm going to do is our troubleshooting step. Our first troubleshooting step when you get this kind of error is to go into the project settings. It's under Edit in Unity and going to Project Settings. And check out the Wwise project path and click the ellipses over here. And make sure it's set in the proper directory. So I got BBC following along, Wwise rhythm in, Wwise rhythm in. And then I'll click on the co-op revolution.wproj. Soundbanks path, yeah, streaming assets, audio, soundbanks, generated soundbanks, that should be correct. Let's clear this, see if they go away. We might also want to look at the Wwise picker, which is this window in Unity. If I go to window and I go down to Wwise picker, it doesn't seem really happy right now. Oh, hey, looks no, it's unhappy again. You can try generating sound banks and seeing if it gives you. Oh, okay. So it says it was successful for me. But for some reason it doesn't want to connect. What Wwise likes to do with its Unity integrations, I'm not really sure how it does it with Unreal, but it really loves having both of them open at the same time. Like if you have Wwise open and you have Unity open, because then it can communicate between the two. And that might be what it's trying to do here. It might be trying to connect. But if you had a Wwise soundbank initialization failed, again, the first step, going to Edit, Project Settings, making sure, just going through the file path and making sure that you find this co-op revolution.wproj, opening that. And then the next step would be to open up the Wwise picker, window, Wwise picker, and then generate soundbanks. Hopefully then you get soundbank generation successful. If you don't get soundbank generation successful, then the next step would be to open it in Wwise, which is kind of what we were doing earlier. Not sure if anybody in the chat is having this problem, but let me know where everybody's at. We'll get through this together. So if I was still having problems here, my next step would be to find my co-op revolution. If I don't see it in here, then I would do open other. The project path that you should set for Wwise, hold on one sec. So in the Unity settings, I don't know if we need to be concerned about the connection, because I think the connection, we might not need that for just like playing the game. So as long as you got soundbank generated successful, then I think you're okay for now. Sorry, I talked over my actions. I went to Edit, Project Settings, and where it says Wwise Project Path, I clicked the ellipses. And wherever you extracted your project, I extracted in mine into BBC following along. And then if I find the rhythm game template Wwise project, there should be a wproj file. And I'm going to select that. so I keep getting sound bank generation successful. This is it's it's a little confusing on my end because I have the version that I downloaded to follow along with y'all, and I have the version that's like connected to my GitHub. So I want to make sure. I hope I'm opening the right one. You don't need to open this quite yet. Maybe this is, yeah. But if you were still having problems, it says to set Wwise application path. Okay. So if you need to set the Wwise application path, that's the second one down here, this Wwise application path in the project settings. For me, it's just right on my C drive. And it's just the top level. But it might be different for where you have Wwise installed. So yeah, I would set that to wherever Wwise installed it. It might be like on a special place. Yeah, it might be in your downloads folder, your application folder. Yeah, there might be a special place that Macs like to put these things. So because I opened up the Wwise project as well, mine is now saying connected. Okay, so someone is having a sound bank generation error. I'm still having an issue. So what you could do, my next step is if it's not generating things in Wwise and you're getting sound bank generation errors in in Unity, then I would open up the Wwise project. Scroll down. Yeah, I had to hit refresh projects before doing generate sound bank. Did that work for you, Black Havoc? Can let me know. It helps with the application error. Okay. If you are still getting the sound bank generation error, then in Wwise, you can go to Layout and Sound Bank and hit Generate All. And it hopefully will give you a couple messages, but nothing, no kind of warnings or errors. And sometimes that works better. Yeah, okay. Sometimes that works better than trying to do things in the Unity project. All right, that was fun. Setting the application path fixed it for me. Okay, yeah, the Unity and the Wwise integration like wants everything like nice and it wants to know where its Wwise. It wants to know where the Unity friend is. Wwise wants to know where its Unity friend is, I guess. This is my way of like personifying them to make it like less stressful for me when things don't go bad. When things go bad. They're just trying to find their friends. Okay. Now I'm going to go into assets and scenes and open up my basic rhythm game.unity. And I don't want to save this example scene that happened on startup. And then I'm going to click up here on game view, which is what the player is going to be seeing. And I'm going to switch my aspect ratio. Let's do 16:10. Just because like the aspect, if like doing free aspects can kind of mess with any sort of UI information. Oh, great. That's always fun. I don't. Yeah. Okay. Now I'm getting bank failed errors. Wonderful. Well, we'll see if this works. I'm gonna hit play and hope for the best here. Let me make sure my audio is sharing. It seems to be. Oh no, it's yeah. Doesn't like it. Doesn't like it at all. We're really striking out today. Let me try generating sound banks from here. So it says it's successful. Let's press space to start. Okay, now it's working. I don't get it. I don't get it. So hopefully this is like pretty straightforward. You know, you have these balls that travel towards you. Yeah, let's full screen this and play this one more time. I might take down the volume a little bit. Press space to start. Okay, I'll press space. So for Alex, how do you get to that Wwise Picker tab in Unity? Go to Window and Wwise Picker. All right, back to the game. Q, W, O, P. Q, W, O, P. There we go. This is our game of the year right here. It's a pretty simple what's called like a node highway. Yeah, you're welcome. You're all welcome for the debugging lesson. Yeah, it's you know, when it works, it's a wonderful thing. When it doesn't, it's a horrible nightmare, and that is game development. So basically, this is our gameplay. We have nodes that spawn some point in time, and we need to hit the we need to hit the nodes at the correct time using Q, W, and OP. So I just want to go through a few things that you might want to check out or change or do whatever else with as you're kind of making this your own game. Why don't I just kind of go through the hierarchy? So the hierarchy in Unity is everything that exists in our scene. It's not necessarily static. Like this thing will change when we hit play, and some things will start spawning in and be destroyed or whatever else. So what we see in the hierarchy now is everything that's going to like be there when we first start. We've got our main camera. I feel like that is pretty self-explanatory. If we wanted to move that around, we could go to our scene view here. There's this little tab here. You could move this up and down or do whatever else we want to do with it. Our event system is connected with the Unity UI. We don't really need to mess with that. Directional Light gives us some kind of illumination. Here, I'll go to game view and we can see what it does. It affects different materials differently. Like we've got some like lane markers in here which are getting light. We don't really need it. I mean, it can work fine without it. But this is useful if you're doing anything in 3D. Our feedback text, so that's this area up here, which any sort of like text and UI, well, not any sort of, but a lot of like text and UI elements in Unity exist on these things called the UI canvas. And it just kind of has like some idiosyncrasies on how it is like rendering things. But we have this like text element, which, you know, at the beginning it says press space to start, and then it kind of changes based on whether you like hit the notes properly or you miss them. So our crossing point, this main parent object. So a lot of things in Unity exist in like hierarchies. So if you like change the position or the rotation or the scale of these things, so if anybody works in Blender or Maya or any other like 3D modeling program, it's kind of a similar idea where you might have a parent and child, and once you kind of like establish that relationship, changes to the parent will affect the child. So if I like change the scale on these, we see like all the co-op sprites change accordingly. And if I change the position, you know, they start moving around. But this crossing points object is going to be significant because our objects are moving towards that crossing point. And for those of you who want to dig around the code, you'll see that we're really trying to like hit that crossing point at a musically significant time. So we're really trying to get to that crossing point. We're trying to like have our falling gems or our co-op cues get to this point like exactly when we want the player to hit the corresponding button. And then these are actually just sprites. They're not doing anything else. We can turn them off and turn them on to if we want them to. If we can tongue-tied again. We can turn them off and turn them on at will, but this is mostly a UI thing so that I don't need to add instructions or tell people what controls to use. They can kind of intuit it just based on what they're seeing. These spawn points are just kind of holders, and they are set at some position. If I kind of look at if I jump over to my scene view, I'm not really rendering these, and I think that might be one thing that could be like an improvement if you wanted to add a little tooltip or something that shows where these things are. They're just at some point back here. And what's happening in the logic is that whenever I get a certain kind of event from our audio engine, we spawn a corresponding cue at these spawn points. So if it gets a cue, then it spawns a cue ball. Same thing for W, O, and P. And so these objects are just points in space that tell us where we're going to spawn things. We have a kill zone, which is meant to just destroy any queue objects that we no longer really care about. So it's just out of view of the camera. It doesn't need to be so close. It could be a little bit farther away. It doesn't really matter. And this is one of the few things that's using Unity physics. So it is this thing called a trigger collider, which means that it's not doing any like it's not doing any kind of like Newtonian physics really, but when something enters this trigger collider, it sees what it is, and if it's one of our queue objects, then it destroys it. So this object has our evaluator. So remember way back before our many bugs when I talked about these evaluation windows? That's what this object is doing. I can try to bring them both on screen here. Oops. So that's what this is. This is seeing like when the user presses a button, do we have anything on screen that corresponds to that button? And where is that object in relation to, or rather, when is that object in relation to when like the ideal timing is? So player presses a button, we're like, okay, they pressed the button at this time. What is everything like that's on screen? Do we have a ball that's in the good window of time? And if so, then we give them a good score, etc., for perfect, late, okay, and if we're missed. One thing that's missing right now is I don't really do anything with when we hit a button early. And I have a couple reasons for doing that. It's just like another thing to sort of worry about. Also, if you have more than one of a like queue object on the screen at a time. So if I have a bunch of queues right in a row, I should let's say P's because we're using queue in multiple ways right now. If I have a bunch of P's right in a row, then like when is it really early? When am I like counting it as early? I just like kind of omitted that for a little bit of simplicity's sake because it's pretty easy to see when something is late. Okay, well like this object still is hanging around, but you didn't press the button at the right time. And so we're going to give you some sort of penalty for that. This is all like kind of abstract, and it's one of those things that kind of makes more sense as you've dig around in the inner workings of these things. But just if all you're kind of like understanding is that this input evaluator is doing what we're looking at here, then that's kind of good enough for now. And this also has some feedback text, which corresponds to this text object here. Wwise Global is something that Wwise makes in every scene. And Wwise Clock Sync is getting information from Wwise, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and doing Unity stuff in relation to what kind of information we're getting from Wwise. So with Wwise, and specifically with Wwise music timeline, you can set up these things called callbacks, which are ways for different parts of code to communicate with each other. I don't know if I used the proper computer science definition of callback, but that's how I use them. And I've set up a bunch of rather somewhat flexible things in our Unity inspector here, so that whenever you get we'll learn what this means when we look at the Wwise project. But if you get this on queue event, right now we're generating a queue. Same thing for the W, the O, and the P. But we could do other things to this as well. We could like make some like flash of light. We can make some like particles at the spawn points. I'm not sure what else would make sense when we're generating these, but maybe like you have some other like visual things that you want to do. We'll do a little bit of visuals. I think we'll have enough time to do that. We'll do some like on beat visuals just to kind of spice this up a little bit. But this is one thing that I've tried to add a little bit of flexibility here if we wanted to do other things when we get events from Wwise. Something that I'm not sure that we'll get to, especially because my MIDI file it broke Wwise for some reason, is doing things with Midi events, which is, for those of you who are musicians who worked with digital audio workstations like Pro Tools or even, well, I don't know if you can do them in a GarageBand, but like Reaper or Ableton or FL Studio. Wwise can read MIDI files on a good day, and you can actually put the MIDI files along with your music, and so then you are just making your levels from these MIDI files themselves, which makes it so that you can kind of do your song creation and your level creation all in the same program. You can do that in your digital audio workstation. This is how like a lot of people who are professionally making rhythm games actually make their games. Is they have like a MIDI file, and they have that correspond to some things in their level editor, and then every time Wwise or whatever middleware they're using gets a MIDI note, then they spawn the corresponding cue. Then we have a level ended event. That's pretty self-explanatory. The other things that are going to be kind of nice if we want to like spice things up with some animations are on every grid, on every beat, and on every bar. So on every grid is flexible. Like this could be every 16th note. It could be, oh, you know what? I'm seeing that my camera is blocking some information here. I'm just going to turn that off for now. So it could be on every 16th note. It could be on every triplet. It could be on every half note, something like that. On every beat, I think is pretty self-explanatory. It's the main like pulse of the music. And every bar, this is something that is a little bit hard to define, but for a lot of music, there are like 4 beats to a bar, and that makes sense in some way. We kind of like feel these like units of time in beats in 4-beat increments. And yeah, we'll do a little bit of like animation with those in a sec. But I just wanted to go through and talk about a couple other things. In particular, this gem generator. So this thing is like spawning our gems, our cues, whatever we want to call these like little balls that are going down our lanes. And you'll see this cue offset in beats. So whenever we get an event from Wwise that says, okay, do this thing, like generate a Q, generate a W, generate an O or a P, we want to give like the player a certain amount of time to react to that. So just popping back to here, we have our cue and our action. And right now we're giving them like 4 beats to prepare. So 4 beats to see the thing on screen coming towards them, and then they need to press the button on the 5th beat, I guess. If that makes sense. And that makes sense for a lot of music. Like I said, a lot of music is 4 beats to a measure. We kind of have some intuition on what that feels like, even if we haven't really like thought about it before. I'm sure some of us have thought about it a lot. Those of you who are musicians, you can't stop counting in beats of 4 if you even tried. But we can easily change this as well. We can make this like 6 beats or 2 beats if we want to have a pretty quick rhythm game. Maybe we'll try that and see how that feels. If we kind of going down with the window sizes, so that's relating back to these evaluation windows here. And I'm putting this in milliseconds. That's because that's how Wwise likes to sort of quantize time, at least in the way that we're kind of grabbing our timeline from them. I think these are pretty generous windows. They feel pretty good to me. One thing you want to be aware of though is like 200 milliseconds. That's like perceptible. That's a perceptible like time window. 100 milliseconds before and 100 milliseconds afterward. You can kind of feel that difference in time. If you're doing something that's really fast, then you're gonna want to make sure that you either adjust these accordingly, or you don't have cues that are one right after another. You don't have these kind of like drum roll cues or something like that, because then your windows are going to overlap. For the purposes of this like class, we're just going to keep things like nice and spaced out, so we're not going to run into that issue at all. But if you want to like make it advanced or expert levels, this might be something that you want to adjust and make a little more, like maybe tighten these up a little bit. Play around with them and see what feels right. These other things, this falling gem QWOP, these are little containers that group the input that we're using. So right now it's just bound to keyboards, and I'll show you in the, actually why don't we go in there now. So this is actually a little bit old hat. This is like what the old Unity way of doing things is. So if I go into project settings under edit and go to the input manager, I can see, okay, this is where you can configure the controls to use with Unity Engine.input API. Consider using the new input system package instead. Okay, thank you, Unity. So, I don't know. Consider using the new input package instead if you want to use a more better input system. I'm just using this because it's kind of what I know. I started Unity in the 5.0 days when we had to carry our C# uphill both ways to just get things working. So I'm a little bit used to the input manager for all of its good and bad. And so I can see that I have rhythm Q, rhythm W, rhythm O, and rhythm P in here. And this is where you might want to mess around with things. If you want to connect this to a makey, I don't think I have one of those on hand right now, but like a makey is like just a little USB thing where you can quickly make a lot of different types of like alt controls, and you just connect them to like left button, right button, A button, or like the A key and the B key, and it just reads it as if it's doing those things on a keyboard. So you could easily remake Quap Revolution with a makey and make like your own kind of DIY dance pad from that if you so desire. And this is where you might want to reconfigure the controls to do that. So right now I have the rhythm Q corresponding to the Q key. Rhythm W corresponds to the W key, but it also corresponds to right. O is both up and O, and P is for some reason alt left alt and P. So that's the gem generator, and then the lane markers are just kind of objects that are keeping the different lanes separated, just some kind of visual indicators. And that's again, this is a high level overview. I'm not really getting into the code. All the code, if you open it up in Visual Studio, I feel like I have it fairly well commented. There's a lot of green, at least in my version of Visual Studio. But I don't want to get into that too much just because we don't have a whole lot of time left, and I want to make sure we get into some level editing. But if anybody has any questions, I'm going to kind of just take a sec, get a little water here. This chat's a little quiet. This might be like really basic stuff for some people. Is anybody here like pretty experienced in Unity? Like what's everybody's experience level in Unity? Intermediate. Beginner. Very experienced a few years ago, trying to pick it back up. Cool. Newer, but pretty familiar with the basics. Okay. Yeah, definitely feel free to, just give a shout out in chat if you want me to explain any one of these objects in a little more detail. Very happy to do that. Someone who's also basics of Wwise too. Great. One thing that I do want to do is if we hit play on this, I'm going to turn down my volume a little bit. This is pretty boring. Like usually when you make a rhythm game, you want some sort of like liveliness to the you want a little bit of liveliness to the animations, to the background, to something. Okay. The kill zone is where you destroy the gem objects, correct? So if I just look at the game in scene view, so that's this other tab up here, and I see this gem that's like right here. My kill zone is back here. Oops. Oh, I've got maximize on play on. Gotta uncheck that. This is a little bit annoying. Okay, I'm just gonna kind of pop out the scene view a little bit so I can see it. So you can see that the cues are just getting to the kill zone and destroying themselves. So I don't have a whole lot that's like really easy to animate on here, but I did make a little script that's called punch scale. It's really simple. I can kind of see it in here. It's using a animation library called DoTween. I mean, it's not just animation; it's a multi-purpose library, but its primary use, I would say, is for animations. And all this DoTween script does is animate something. It does what's like called the punch scale effect, where it punches it up or punches it down to a certain scale, and then goes back to its original scale after some amount of time. And I've put that on my. I haven't put that on my lane markers. I'm going to put that on my lane markers. So if I want to add this punch scale script to my lane markers, I can, if I wanted to add it to all three, I can open up the lane markers and just shift click like that. And I can either drag this script, so it's in assets, scripts. Can drag it onto them like this. I'm actually going to bring this magnitude down to 1 2 is a little bit high based on like how big these things are. And so what I'm doing here is like I want to give this thing like a little bit of animation on beat or on every bar. Like I want to give this thing a little bit of life. And these things just aren't doing anything. They're just kind of like taking up screen space. So we might as well make them move a little bit. So that's why I added these punch scale scripts. So you can either shift click, grab them all, and add that. You can also do add component, find the punch scale script. You can click and drag the script onto it like that into the hierarchy. Multiple ways you can add things to other objects. But the magic is going to happen over here in the Wwise clock sync, Wwise clock sync script. And at this like on every beat. So let's have the middle one go on every beat. So I'm gonna add that using this plus sign. So I added something to listen to this on every beat event. Runtime only because we don't need it to work in anything else. And I need to define which object it is. So I gotta find that middle. There it is. The middle one, conveniently in the middle there. Sometimes when you're trying to like make references like this, it's helpful to lock your object in the inspector with this little tiny padlock here that's really easy to miss. And that way, when I click on anything else, I still have this open. All right, so I want this middle one to like pulse. We're basically gonna have this thing pulse on every beat. So I'm gonna drag the objects. So it'll say lane marker. And under the function where it says no function, you know, there might be some like built-in functions on these different components, but we really want to go to this punch scale, and the method that we're looking for is punch scale effect. So I'm going to do that one more time on every bar, just so everybody can follow along. So I want these outer ones to pulse on every bar. So that's this one and this one. In fact, let's rename these. I'm just gonna kind of like click once and hover over it, or I can also right click and rename. And this is our left lane marker from looking from the player's perspective. Center. And right lane marker. Okay. So for our on every bar, we're going to have our left lane marker do the same thing. So we drag the object reference into there. I have this padlock locked, so it doesn't matter if I click on them. And for the function, I'm going to go down to punch scale and do punch scale effect. So these kind of Unity events are nice because for those of you who are familiar with scripting, or at least like understand what scripting is doing, any sort of public event that you or public method, I should say, it's not even a public event. So if you're in your script editor or something like that, you see I have like public void. So anything I do like public void, whatever, do stuff, I can have these things do that do stuff event, or do stuff method. I'm getting my terminology confused, which makes like which makes it like a little bit of more flexible system. That's kind of what I was going for with the way I set this up. I don't really need this, but just to demonstrate, like if I save this, like, it's gonna take its time, but I could do that, do stuff. Now it's like now appearing in my drop down menu. But I want this punch scale effect because that's actually doing something. So then I'm doing that with my right lane marker as well. Punch scale effect. All right, I'm gonna go back to my game view and just see how it looks now. Now I gotta press space to start. It's a moderate improvement. I would say it's a moderate improvement. I think this is like a bigger design concern though. Like whenever you're making a music game, you just want as much like happening to the beat as possible. Like if I was trying to ship this, I would definitely be changing the skybox. I would be like doing something in the background. I would be having like little flashes of light or something when the balls get spawned. You know, as much like synesthetic juice as you can pump into this thing. That's just making a better music game experience. So yeah, hopefully these are useful in like adding some character to your game. You can like really connect them to whatever you want. You can make your own animations if you're familiar with how to do that in Unity, and you can connect those to every beat, every bar. You can do a little bit of math. If you did like a modulo or something like that, you could have these happen every other beat. So you just do, if you have like some counter, and if that's a multiple of 2, then you have them fire, and if it's not, then you don't have it fire. If you don't know what I mean, we can maybe do that a little bit later, but I want to make sure we have time to go into other stuff. All that just to say, like, these are pretty useful at getting animations to sync to music in a pretty fun way. Or hopefully fun way. All right, I'm going to now go back to where I changed my Q offset. I think it was in the gem generator. I'm going to bring this back to 4. And we are going to enter the Wwise portion of the class in just 1 minute. I'm just going to go grab a drink of water, and I'm just going to I'm just going to go grab a drink of water because I've been talking for a little while. So I'm just going to put the music on a loop. Here we go. All right, be back in 1 minute. Okay, I'm back. So let's make sure that's not playing anymore. All right, so feel free to like toss any questions about the Unity project in the stream chat. But I'm gonna move over to Wwise now, because this is how we're gonna kind of like create our level, and hopefully we can do a little more stuff than I'm doing right now, which is pretty simplistic. So if you don't already have Wwise open, remember you need to get the Wwise launcher, and you need to make sure you have like a Wwise profile and all that stuff. But hopefully you have like a projects tab, and you can find the coop-revolution.wproj that's in the correct directory. So mine's in Babycastles following along, etc. This is already open in Wwise, so I'm going to close that and open the window that's already open. Okay, so this is Wwise. What Wwise is a audio middleware. So what's an audio middleware is the logical next question. It's basically an audio engine. It's taking like information from the game engine, figuring out what kind of sound stuff needs to happen, and sending that to your audio driver or the audio driver on your game console or phone or whatever platform that you're using. So that's what Wwise is kind of built to do. It's also meant to be a increasingly powerful like sound design tool. So there's a lot of behaviors you can kind of create and manipulate and fine tune in Wwise. Or Fmod. Fmod is their kind of closest competitor in the United States. Fmod is in some ways it's more user friendly, but I think it's a little bit more difficult to script. They both have their like strengths and weaknesses, I would say. So there's like I said at the beginning of the class, there's a whole bunch of Wwise that we're not really going to get into. Things like parameters, or RTPCs as they're called, game states and switches and stuff like that, because we're really concerned with the interactive music and the things that we can do in the interactive music system. One thing that you should know though is, as we kind of saw before with like the errors that we were getting in Unity, Wwise communicates to Unity through sound banks, or at least it packages up all the audio information after you create it into these things called sound banks, and that's what it sends off to Unity. And when you make builds, that's what it puts in your assets or resources or whatever folder, your data folder, I guess is usually what it is those sound banks. It has the data and any sort of logic that it needs to play the correct sounds. So it means the workflow is like a little bit different and it has a couple more steps than it does in general like Unity. Like if you're used to just working with audio sources in Unity, Wwise now has audio, which gets put into events, which get put into sound banks, and that's what you like send over to Unity. It's just a little these few more steps like allow for a more flexible system, but they can also be pretty confusing, especially like for those of you who are new to it. Basically what you need to know is that the stuff that we're actually like doing in Unity is we're calling these events. So I'll have like play note highway music, and I can see in my Unity projects under Wwise clock sync that, let's see, where is it? Yeah, this Note Highway Wise event is play Note Highway music, just like it appears in my Wise project. So this is in my like events tab in the Project Explorer. So that's like how you get things to make sound in Unity, is you have these Wise events. And towards the end, well, actually, we're already getting kind of long, but yeah, I'll try to go over a little bit about how like you can put in your own sound effects in Unity, at least like grab them from Wise, because as I said before, like you have the disadvantage when using Wise that you can't use built-in Unity audio. It's sort of one or the other. So the event that we're most concerned with, and basically the audio that we're most concerned with, is down here with the rhythm game template music. And Wise actually has a special layout for working with interactive music. If we go to layouts and go down to interactive music, for me it's F10. I'm not sure how it changes on Mac. But now we can see something that might look familiar, a little familiar to those of you who've used audio editing programs, because now we have like a timeline, and this shows a waveform. And if I hit play down here, the transport's down here, but you can also press spacebar, which is pretty typical in audio editing programs. And I can hear the music that I've made for this game. A few things to take note of up here, especially if you like bring in your own music, which I definitely encourage you to do if you have it. The tempo, this isn't just arbitrary. This is like set to whatever my tempo is in the music. And you should see that things line up with your bars and beats here. If you don't see bars and beats, like maybe it looks like a regular timeline, you want to right click down here in the top like level, the top like little area here above the audio clip. So if you have something that looks like this, that's not going to be super useful to you. And you want to make sure it's in bars and beats. So I could adjust my tempo if like I have a different kind of track. It's like 180 BPM or something like that. You see that my grid spacing changes quite a bit. Obviously it doesn't really work for this song. So I'm going to go back to 125. I will say there isn't a great way to change tempo during the course of a song. So if that's something that you're like hoping to do, you're going to want to look into some of the other interactive features of Wise and do like a fade between two different music sections. That's not super common, so that's a bit of an edge case, but I know that, you know, for some of you who make music which is more complex than just, you know, 125 and 4 beats per minute, that might be something that you want to do, is having more sections of music. The next thing to take note of is the grid. So right now it's set to be 4 bars. So if we remember, we have four beats per bar, and now we have a quote unquote grid, which is every 4 bars. And if I pop back over to my Unity projects, remember that I have an on every grid event. So if I wanted to connect that to an animation or some sort of a gameplay event or something like that, then that's going to happen at whatever interval I define here in my Wwise project. So it could be every 4 bars, 2 bars, 1 bar beat, all the way down to 30-second down, or 30-second note triplet. Okay, let's get to the slightly more interesting part though. So now we see all these flags here, and this is our level. This is our beat map right here. Are these different markers, and we can make them by, I think we shift click. Yeah. If you hold shift and click, then you can create additional markers, which we can use to kind of build out our level a little more. Can you have multiple grids with multiple bar frequencies? I don't believe you can. So I think if you want to do something that is more complicated or have things that are like at additional intervals, you're probably going to want to have to build that out. If you do a little bit of math and just have like an index that's counting up every grid or every beat or something like that, then you can like devise more complex like callbacks or things like that. That is a good question. It would be nice if you could add additional grids, to do something every 4 bars. If you were doing something with music that wasn't recorded to a quick, is there any way to manually adjust to compensate for this? I would say that if you're doing a rhythm game that isn't like strictly quantized, like that's one way that we talk about it, is like quantization. If you're doing something that's like more like loose, then you just want to try to like line up your I guess it depends on your own like personal use case, but basically the way I would approach it is I would try to make my level like line up with the music as closely as possible, and then try to be like somewhat consistent on how I'm queuing things. Giving them cues a certain amount of time in advance, and just try to keep that as consistent as possible. There isn't really a like adaptive sort of tempo type of thing that you maybe have seen in other programs. Like I know Ableton Live does something like that. There really isn't that kind of feature in Wwise. So it depends if you're talking about like a kind of music that's like really rhythmic, but it doesn't like work with a metronome, like strictly speaking. Then I think you're probably going to be fine with just making sure that your cues and your offsets are consistent. And if you're doing something that's more like an orchestral piece, because that is almost never metronomic, then you're just gonna want to make sure that you're just giving a lot of like they're just kind of giving adequate feedback as to when like you expect people to do stuff. It's like you're giving them enough time to prepare for pressing the button at the right time. I hope that's a little helpful. I mean, it's just kind of like hard to, those use cases are hard, It's like really easy to do rhythm games to drum machines or like to music made with drum machines. But doing things that's more like an orchestral piece or something is a little bit tougher. Okay. So let's like do some stuff with some level design here. Okay, so I'm just gonna like focus my attention on these bass notes, and I want to make my notes correspond to these bass notes. So I'm gonna, if I hold, I think it's Control and Shift for me. Yeah, Control and Shift and do my mouse wheel, I can zoom in. I can also, there's a little plus key down here, plus icon, that lets me zoom in. So I'm going to hit a Shift and let's do a Q on this kind of glissando here. Let's make this a W. And we're going to hold Shift and make a double click to rename this to O. So this is important that I'm renaming these in this way, because that's what the Unity script is expecting right now. It's expecting QWOP. Hopefully that's pretty straightforward. Maybe I'll do, well, these are all the same notes, so maybe I want to do this to have the same note correspond to the same sound. Or maybe this should be P because it's higher. And these should all be Qs. Let's try that. All right, and then we have some drums. I'll move forward a little bit. Okay, so then there's a little bit of a thing on an offbeat. And I'm going to remove this. So this is where the MIDI could come in handy, if that was working for us. Sounds like I have one at there and right here. Whoops. So that one's another Q. Let's make this one a W, I guess. I don't know. There's not really a way to copy paste these, which is kind of annoying. You just got to do it all manually. Oops. And let's just get these first ones. Okay, I think that's pretty close. So I'm going to try to Control S or go to Project and save. Let's see if my changes show up in the Unity editor. Sometimes you need to build the sound banks, but like I said, Unity and Wwise try to be friends. They like to hang out with each other, and a lot of times you'll see changes appear in Unity just by saving. A lot of times, but not always. They're not always the best of friends. Nope, they didn't show up. So I'm gonna go back in here. And to build my sound banks, I can go to I can go to the Soundbanks tab and click on Note Highway, or right click on it, and do generate soundbanks for current platform or all platforms. I'll do all platforms. That's probably the quickest way to generate them. Whoops. Now let's try this. My desktop audio is pretty low, but I think we're probably noticing that the problem now is that these are lined up really nice for cueing the sound, but not for having the player press them at that particular time. Let me play it one more time so we know what I mean. So you can see that I'm having to press the notes exactly 4 beats after I hear those bass notes. So there's no the way that Wwise is communicating this. It's not really looking ahead to these events. Well, that's a little bit annoying because we've like gone and like spent this time to line these things up exactly where we want them to. Fortunately, we can compensate for this because we know that, you know, from our cue offset back here in our gem generator, we know that we want to have these cues generate 4 notes ahead. We know that. We can just move this thing over to the right 4 notes, or 1 measure. For me, it's 1 measure because we're in 4/4 time. So I just clicked and dragged on this music clip and just kind of slid it over 4 notes. Gonna Control S, go over and generate my sound bank one more time. I gotta press play and let's see if that feels better. Okay, so hopefully that illustrated kind of like how to fix that particular issue. Then when I go back here, you know, let's say like I'm not quite done with my level editor. This is how I like to work. This makes sense to me. You kind of, you know, you might want to find your own working method if this is a little confusing. But I slide it back over those 4 beats, and then I'll keep going and making my beat map. One thing you might have noticed though when you did have this over here, you have a bar of silence, and you can either leave that bar of silence there, or if you hover over this green flag, it says entry cue. Hold the control key to move the cursor without moving the content of the segment. So basically we can get rid of this dead time. We can get rid of this silence by holding control and just dragging that. We still keep our offset here, and so our gems will generate at the proper time relative to where we want the player to press the note. again, though, we just kind of want to make sure this is our last step. So I'm going to leave that back there for now because I just want to kind of be able to shift this thing without worrying about it too much. And we're going to go back to finishing my beatmap because it seems like we got an okay thing going here. I'm just going to like focus on the first, 16 measures or so. I'm going to go a little bit faster now because I think we get the idea. Oops, get the general idea here. I'll just keep following the baseline. Do Q. WO. Quick whoa. Gotta get more P's in here. I'll just make this a P. Not consistent. But at least it'll be on beat. Feel free to drop any questions in chat while I'm doing this. Kind of getting towards the end here, so if there's anything that people want to cover that I haven't been able to get to yet, or you have questions about anything in particular. Oh yeah, sustain notes. Yeah. So there's no logic in this right now for doing sustain notes. One thing that is like one thing that you might want to look into if you wanted to do sustain notes. So if like, this is kind of when if you've played DDR before, like when you have to press down on a like arrow key or something for a longer period of time. Yeah, I wish I could have coded this in a little bit more, but if you do end up, yeah, DDR is what you were thinking of. You could do it in the same, you could make your beatmap the same way we're doing if you wanted to like manually make a cue called like P on or like sustain on. P on or P off or P sustain on, P sustain off. this is where you do need to get into the code a little bit more, and I hope to like update this project soon. Can't really give it an exact timeline, but hopefully we can update this soon with that already pre-coded, so you don't need to do too much with it. Show where we would do that. This is also where MIDI notes are really useful. Yeah. No, I think it's good to at least go over it a little bit. This is where MIDI would be really useful, and I think like doing it in this way with like adding these flags is pretty tedious, especially if you want to have those like sustains. What I would do is look into like making your own MIDI beatmaps. And so if you look in the Node Highway Wise sync, kind of starting around line 147, there's a little bit of info on using MIDI beatmaps. And right now I'm just looking for C, I think it's C4 and C and A4 or something like that, or A3 maybe. But you can get this Wise event called like note on, and you can also get the note off cues. So I'd be like looking to connect these to how I'm like generating the game objects. And then there's also the work that you would need to do to mess with the evaluator portion. So that you can detect whether the person is like holding down the key for that sustained amount of time. Definitely happy to like, go through it in more detail. Like I said before, it's something that I hope to add as like an addendum to this project, and push out an update to it. So, hit me up via email or something like that if you want to be notified once I get around to that. But if you want to do it yourself, this is probably where I would do it, is in the MIDI notes. And then I would need to generate a specific type of gem that is like a sustained gem or something like that, according to that. Just finish up my level here. Okay. All right, we got a bunch of sound events here to work with. So I'm going to save again and go here, generate sound banks for all platforms. Does the level end cue get the music to fade out? Right now the level end cue, I don't think it really does anything, honestly. I can see, we get an event from that. And how do I break that out? Yeah, I have this like level ended thing that it invokes. But right now on level end, yeah, I guess this ends level, but I'm not really even sure what that does. Yeah, it just says debug log level ended. So if you if you wanted to fade your level out or like go back to main menu or something like that, that'd be kind of where you would do that. And then you would just like move your level ended move your level ended event around wherever you want to. But no, it doesn't really do anything. It prints a log message right now. All right, I'm going to try my revised level right now, and then yeah, still open for any questions. What was I looking to do? Oh, I was going to turn this down a bit. Can you fade in Wwise? Yes. There's a few different ways you can fade in Wwise. You could fade in. You can add automation directly to your where is it? It's the automation curves. It's the low pass filter. There's a way to add volume automation directly on here, and I can't seem to find it right now. Oh, volume. There we go. They call it envelopes here. So you can add like directly if you wanted the thing to fade in like that. Oh right, yeah, because we got to do that. Yes, visible world. I can do that because I forgot to do that again. Anyway. But yeah, so one way you can do fading in volume is by doing that directly in the Wwise timeline. You can make events that say to fade in a certain sound. Like I could have a add, and I could have like a voice volume, or let's see, there's a fade in. So I could set the voice volume here. Let me go to the that's not. How do I do the I knew how to do this before. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly like how to do it this method, but you can also like group things into buses, you know, like a mixing board, and then do other things in events that take place over some amount of time. So yeah, there's a few ways that you can. Someone is rating. I don't even know what that means. Kids these days. Yeah, there's a few different ways. I mean, I'm trying to find how to, because when I do this voice volume and set voice volume, there's usually a thing that shows up over here that shows like how to do that over time. Oh, here we go. It's hidden. All right. Set the target, and then you set the fade time on these. So you can do that to do like crossfades and stuff like that. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to go back and do the offset thing that we needed to do. So I need to go to my interactive music layout. Oh, okay, I see. Thank you, Poodleface, for that explanation. Okay, so I just need to. Right now, all my cues are set up, lined up with the bass note timings. So I want them to occur 4 beats before then. So I just want to drag this over 1 bar, which is 4 beats. It's going to have a little bit of silence, but that's fine by me. Going to click over to my Sound Banks tab, right click, and generate for all platforms. No errors. Let's play this again, and I'll press space. So I had a bar of silence, but that's okay. get a rhythm game going. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much my working process for making rhythm games in Unity and Wwise. Definitely don't need to use Unity. Definitely don't need to use Wwise. Check out those slides if you want some resources on how to do this in just Unity or in Unity and Fmod or Unreal or whatever else. Actually, I haven't done it in Unreal, but I know it's possible. Yeah, thank you all for joining. Lee, I think there's a evaluation thing or something like that, right? But yeah, if there's an evaluation thing, please fill that out. I want to know what you liked, what you didn't, what you got out of this class. There isn't, but there could be. Okay, maybe I'll like send one out or something. Yeah, thank you all so much for coming. I sorry, I thought that was standard issue. I'm like thinking in like GDC talks where you have to like fill out survey evaluations or something like that. Thank you all for coming to my Babycastles GDC talk, and yeah, if you'd like to donate, Babycastles is a nonprofit and does wonderful things in the New York area and beyond on the interwebs. We are not GDC. Babycastles is definitely not GDC, which is very good. All right, thank you all. Thank you all for hanging in there too. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Definitely was unexpected, but I get a crash course in debugging Wwise as well. Have a good rest of your afternoon, everybody, and I'll just play with those tunes again. I mean, I made the music myself. I really hope we do. I mean, the drum loop is like royalty free, so. It's triggering on Shazam? Oh no. Oh no. We'll see then. I can share the Ableton project with them.